I'm going to put you on the hot seat because you're closest to me, so let's
pleasure.
start with you. When we say responsible mining in Saudi Arabia, what exactly do we mean?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us, Tomi. What a big, wide question that you have. And I think when you look at extractive industries as a whole, Saudi Arabia is not new to extractive industries. We've been in this business of extractive industries for a century now. So back in the day, in the 1940s and 1950s, there was this major theory that there is peak oil, and oil will run out in the early 90s. And the focus was how to sustainably, responsibly get oil to all the consumers around the world. And Saudi took a major leadership position at the time. And a significant amount of capital, of talent, of development in midstream and downstream activities happened to explore for oil, to refine oil, and to build a petrochemical industry while educating the Saudi population, while supporting all other sectors in the kingdom to be able to thrive. And now we come to a turn of extractive industries again, where people are shouting, peak lithium, peak cobalt, peak copper. So how do we make sure that we run it, again, sustainably, responsibly? We know the recipe is simple. Again, it's about exploration, it's about processing, it's about refining, it's about injecting the capital, it's about taking that leadership position. And what we're doing is that we've opened up Saudi Arabia, we've opened it up for exploration, we're incentivizing exploration, we're making sure that we get the best talent. And during that process, we're making sure that we educate our people, we create more mining engineers, we create more geologists, we create more universities that are focused in the field, and all other professions that support the mining industry. And with that, we also took a wider view on the mining sector as an extractive industry that we want to support adjacent industries. We want to support the processing and refining of these minerals. We want to be a refining and processing hub, leveraging all the capabilities that the kingdom provide for the industrialization. From what we're going to hear more about from Mudun, we have the industrial cities of Ras Al Khair, Jubail, Yanbu, and the rest of it. So we know how the recipe works, and we want to come back and reapply it, and taking that leadership position in responsible and sustainable value chains.
So when Modern is thinking about the technologies and developing those and moving things forward, what are you thinking when you think responsible and being responsible in that process? How do you incorporate that in the work that you are doing every day at Modern?
Maybe as Abdulrahman mentioned through his talks, and you know, Saudi Arabia today is a player in the global for the mining sector. Therefore, the development maybe of industrial city is critical, and that's why it is very important that Mudun participate in this conversation to contribute and give more information of how Mudun can contribute to the value chain of the mining sector. And I think Saudi Arabia doesn't have the long legacy in mining or even in the industrial, and that gives us the advantage. And we already begun to sustainability in mind, developing our sectors, especially in mining and in the industrial. Today, Mudun has developed 36 industrial cities across the kingdom, leveraging the competitive edges and the access of the natural resources, focusing on the state-of-the-art infrastructure, smart cities to deliver the factories of the future. So all of these efforts has been heavily and integrity with the other stakeholders have been developed to help all the sectors and specifically the mining sector.
I'm wondering whether, as we move forward, and perhaps I can come to you, Suleiman, when we move forward and we're thinking about creating processes and procedures in Saudi Arabia that take into account what the previous first gentlemen have said about how we think, but ensuring that some of those don't become impediments in the future, so that we're considerate, we're constrained, but we allow enough room for movement. How does that happen, particularly in a Saudi context, one, but if we can go outside of Saudi Arabia and looking at how we create opportunities for learning in the region, how does that look?
Today I heard from the minister, he said that Saudi Arabia, they are interested to have the mining in Saudi Arabia as well as in the world to be developed and to cooperate. In this room, we have Mr. Abdurrahman representing the Ministry of the Resource, and we have here Mudun. Our part to complete their mission, because Mr. Abdurrahman, the Ministry of Resource, they are giving the license. And Mudun, they are preparing for us the factory and the vision for the country to make the fourth chain, to develop the mine, to get the resource, to refine the resource, to refine the source, whether it is gold, whether it is copper, whether it is nickel, whether it is aluminum, whether it is lithium, whether it's uranium, whatever you name it, mineral we have in Saudi Arabia, to refine it and to transfer it to modern for manufacture, to have this manufacture to fulfill the demand for the local product, as well as to export the product. Exactly copying the scenario which is happening with oil. We are fulfill the oil for all the world. Plus, we have the petrochemical. We are supplying to the majority of the world for the petrochemical. Now we are doing for the mineral, which is the aim of the Saudi Arabia. As Riyadh today, it's becoming one of the basic hub for the mining worldwide, which has been launched because our government, they have their Vision 23, and they have pointing the mining sector to be booming for this stage. So everybody now here to come and to chat to achieve the vision for 2030, which our Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been announced with his minister. This is for locally, and for internationally, the Saudi Invest, there has been providing the opportunity to invest outside of Saudi Arabia in the mining sector, in energy, in nitrogen, in agriculture, in all this. So we are combining the responsibility for us being here together to improve the vision of the Saudi Arabia and to contain the fourth chain, mining the resource, refine the resource, making the manufacture, fulfill demand of the world. This is number one. When we see for the private or for the local, we have to develop the youth for their education to be working with the miner. And we have the mother company in Saudi Arabia, Ma'aden. They have an institute where they are training all the youth with the Al-Mawarid, which is Quwa, which is the human resource for Saudi Arabia, and financing also youth to be trained and to be in knowledge of the mining sector and all the aspects to provide a job for the youth in the entire of Saudi Arabia, which has been doing in a great achievement and great goals, and the percentage of the income in this job, it is increasing double what is an average rate, this is the desire by Royal Prince Mohammed bin Salman to improve the income for the local, which is make win-win deal. As a company, we are satisfied. As the ministry, they are achieving their goal. As the modern, they already having the sites for the factory and the sites factory and supporting to the world demand. This is our government vision, and we are all armed to complete each other vision to hit to the goal to achieve it before 2030.
There is no question, Brian.
And clear to announce that Saudi Gold Refinery, they have the 4 chain already done before 2030. Mining the gold, refining the gold, making the gold as the jewelry, and distributing the demand for that. And by the time the Saudi Arabia, it is the largest gold consumption of the biggest 5, the largest gold consumption in the world.
So I believe what Mr. Suleiman is saying, that we're doing the easy job here, just giving licenses.
Yeah, I think that's what he's trying to tell you. He's saying, you've got the easy job, we're doing the hard work. Brian,
Almost true. Almost.
Okay, gentlemen, okay. Brian, if I can now come to you, because if I don't do that, we're never going to get to you, Brian. So if I can come to you, Brian, we can hear the enthusiasm, not just in this panel, but I think if you speak to many here in Saudi Arabia in business, particularly in this sector, you can feel the enthusiasm, you can see it, and there's certainly a desire to do it and to do it right and to consider the right things. When one looks more specifically at the ground, and one can appreciate that ideas and thinking are one thing, making them into real on the ground isn't always the same thing. In some instances, we're seeing it happen. We heard from the previous panel what Ma'aden is doing in this regard. But more broadly speaking, how much of a genuine and real will is manifesting on the ground that you are seeing, that's allowing us to actually appreciate, recognize, and continue to develop these responsible mineral value chains? So that it's not just talk. Is it happening? Is there a genuine will to make it happen? Is it being seen?
Well, thanks to me. Abdul Rahman will know I always come in to this from left field, so he's already rolling his eyes. But I think, let me take one step back and say, responsible what? Because in my mind, there are 3 levels of responsibility. There's governmental responsibility. In other words, what's the law? Is that done and is that managed in a responsible way? And we look around the world and there are places where government legislation is not responsible in a way. And maybe I need to take one step back. For me, responsible equals sustainable. If we don't behave in a responsible way, then nothing is ever going to be sustainable. So government, we can put that in one packet. I think the next area that we talk about when we talk about responsibility is corporate responsibility. In other words, what am I doing as an organization which is to behave in a responsible way? Bearing in mind that I have to fit in within a framework of a legal and corporate thing. So I can be responsible in terms of that, but irresponsible as a corporate thing. The last one, which we always forget when we talk about these big global things, is personal responsibility. And you can't have responsibility in an industry without people taking personal ownership of those things. So, that for me is the issue and the definition. Now, where we sit, well, I'll take it down to the micro level. One of the obsessions I have is safety. Driving on the roads in Saudi, Abdul Rahman will know I bang on and bang on and bang on about this. I climbed in our vehicle this morning. Our driver took responsibility for us. He would not start the car until we had all put our seatbelts on. He took responsibility for his action. If you can't get people to do that at the local level, you cannot expect corporates to do it. Government have to help regulate to make sure that we stay in line. So that really is, for me, the big issues.
I really appreciate that, and I think I'm going to come back and unpack some of what you've said, because it really is key to the question of how do we deliver responsibility. But before we do that, Suhair, if I could come to you, last but of course certainly not least. Brian has given us a sense of what his view is when we're talking about responsibility. What is your view?
First, thank you for inviting us to this panel. And my point of view, to be responsible is a matter of everybody, not only one side, not only the government, not only in the mine, but everybody must be responsible. And to be responsible is to be involved in environmental care, in social commitment, and also to use new technology new innovation, and I think to have a global share of knowledge, not to stay here what we know, but to have a global. So that helps us to have to maintain the responsibility for mineral, to have a sustainability, and to go aligned with the world standards. So I think this is what we need to do, everybody, not to be focused in one.
Abdulrahman, seeing as you have the easy job of just giving people licenses, let's talk a little bit about how you can do that. One aspect is the standards, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, each jurisdiction has the authority to develop the rules that allow them to give the licenses as they do. But a conversation, of course, that was had yesterday was particularly around the importance of ensuring that there are global standards so that we're not just saying, well, what did you want to do in Saudi Arabia, but that organizations are able to have some sense of certainty when they're operating in different jurisdictions. When you are approaching that around the context in which you're giving people licenses, how are you going about thinking about those regulations and those rules for them?
Well, it's great to bring up the topic of standards, because when we developed our mining code, our mining law, we adopted the ICMM standard, ICMM protocol. We worked with the World Bank, we worked with private sector players to make sure that we have something implementable, especially when it comes to environmental and social. So there are certain protocols and guidelines that you need to follow. But that doesn't solve the problems. How do you implement it, and how do you make sure that you're following up on it? So I'll give you 3 examples. When we do our licensing grounds, our tenders, we have 15% to 25% only on social. So we'll evaluate the work program of social, or the social contribution. We'll evaluate talent development. We'll evaluate investments that will happen in the local community, and any support to the procurement support. So how much are you going to buy from that local community? Another example is in the incentive scheme that the minister approved yesterday. 700 million Saudi riyal over the course of 7 years. And we wanted to enhance the multiplier effect of that grant program. So we said we will look at the local content of that drilling, of the geophysics, of the geochemistry. And we want to see a clear plan of how we're going to develop the exploration talent in your field. So we will tie the expert that you bring, the discoverer, the explorer, we'll tie him with Saudi geologists, and we'll substantially cover a lot of the expenses of the Saudi employee and your expert, but we want to make sure that that knowledge is transferred, and that will be audited. A third example is Nuthri, our exploration incubator. So in order to have sustainable exploration in the kingdom, responsible exploration in the kingdom, we know that we must create Saudi explorers. We must enhance the diversity of our players. Yes, it's great to bring in knowledge and talent from all over the world, but you need to have that local feed of explorers. So Nuthri, an incubator, we bring in the geology minds and the discoverer and the entrepreneurs that are excited about the mining sector, and we try to debottleneck all the issues that they may face. So we create an agile, vibrant, junior society in the kingdom. And the private sector has been really helpful in all 3. Yeah. You're upping the level of everyone and new entrants as well.
How is that impacting on the ground, Brian?
No, once again, left field. He and I have many tussles,
Yeah.
so that's it. And we're engaged with the Nuthri program. And I think that when we look at the responsibility from a national level, from a Saudi level, I think the critical thing is that Saudi must be seen to becoming a gold standard in terms of it is. Because, let me give you an example. And Norway is currently busy considering deep sea mining. Deep sea mining is a big issue. It globally is a huge issue. I'm not even sure where I stand on it, but it is an issue. But if Norway starts approving it, you know, they recognize there's kind of been blue standard. And so other industries and other countries will go along because they say, if it's good enough for Norway, the moment, I think the balance is still, if it's good enough for Saudi, we're not sure whether it's still good enough for the rest of the world. And I think the aspiration, and I really genuinely believe in the ministry and the way they're doing it, and they set the law up, that Saudi is aiming to become gold standard. And they're big, important things. On my level, one of the things is resources. So, you know, announcing resources without having a kind of proper program of diligence and control is not there. The ministry has put together that, and we're part of that, and we welcome that because that creates the right thing. But at the same time, you know, we have to behave on the ground. So on the ground, I take it down to the micro level. You know, I drive down this country, and people throw rubbish out the window. And we talk about, from a corporate level, environment and sustainability, and yet they don't behave in that way. So we have a problem of trying to filter down that message to the lowest level. And that really, for me, is the challenge. Come back to my bugbear, driving. Okay? You work for me.
I'm a bit worried about you in driving, but okay, let's hear it.
You work for me, you put a seatbelt on.
Yeah.
Okay? Some of my employees say this is the first time in their lives they've ever put a seatbelt on. That's about responsibility. I have a duty of care to my people. If I can't insist on them being safe at work, how can I talk about social
But equally,
responsibility?
Brian, that is not something that you can legislate necessarily, right? You can legislate in terms of punishment, but behavior is not something that you can
100%.
legislate, right? So I'll come to you just now. So if we're talking about responsibility as a culture change, and thus the point coming back to say, it's one thing for us to have these idealistic, high-level strategic visions that say, this is what we want to do, but it always comes down to where the rubber meets the road, what
100%.
happens on the ground, to use your car and driving analogy, which you clearly love. But I still am trying to get us to the point where, what is that point where the rubber meets the road? What needs to happen from a legislative policy environment to ensure that when we're talking about responsibility, we're seeing it manifest on the ground? So I would like you to respond to that, and then Suleiman, if you can respond to that, and then Abdul Rahman, I'll come to you. Are you going to talk about driving again? Okay.
No, to me, it's a point, and I understand what you're saying. I think I come back to the legislative framework here is fine. I think the issue is now about implementation. And I come back to my three-phrase definition. You know, corporately, we have to do it in the right way, and we try. I think the government needs to sometimes be a little bit more rigorous in its testing of us, because we're not, you know, we take corners where we can. But it's also about personal responsibility. It's about people developing a culture which says, I am. So my safety rules, again, my first safety rule is I'm responsible for my own safety. Second rule is I am responsible for my brother's safety. You know, those are the two rules. And we have to bring that into the whole framework, our environmental framework, our social framework. We cannot function as a society without that word.
Suleiman?
Really, I have no clue, but responsibility is a big issue. And
I'm going to ask you to speak up just a little bit, because I'm struggling to hear you.
I have no clue much, but when you talk about responsibility, you go to the macro level for it. If you talk about now the processing, for example, for the mine, they are all using material which is a cyanide, which is not good for the environment. So it should be protected very well. But we have here in Saudi Arabia, King Abdulaziz for Research Center in Jeddah, and we have center in the world, they can replace this kind of material for good environment, good material with the environment. So we should do it as we are going for mine for all of Saudi Arabia, which is 650. This is national need. This is number one. Number two, for all the other process which I see the ministry, they are following. In my mind, there is 50 representative from the ministry visit my mind last year, which is they are making a great follow-up and a great achievement. And that's wherever they visit, they see any small click, they are giving a note to be corrected, which is mean that their help and their assistance, it is pushing the responsibility for the mine sector to do their job proper and to give them the attitude. So the responsibility, whatever case you already having in any kind, you should do it from A to Z completely, in any manner. This is one point for giving the license. Now, when they are giving the license, there is a procedure to be achieved from 1 to Z, and they are following up. This is their responsibility, and this is our duty. When our duty is becoming a responsibility for our people to do it. But no doubt, if we work, there is an error, there is a mistakes there where it should be adjusted while you are working with the follow. So the rule for us as a miner and the rule for the ministry, together we reach the destination safely. But we are one team. We are both one team.
Abdulrahman?
Yeah, and I would say the responsibility on us initially when you give the licenses to pick the right player, to make sure that you give that right decision, that you have the right player that will monitor their drivers on the ground, but also, most importantly, that they enrich that culture so that underground they continue to follow procedure and they continue to be safe. Because we cannot risk having major incidents in the kingdom. We're a new entrant to the mining sector and we want to start it the right way. And then the next thing comes inspection and compliance and making sure that these companies and these licenses holders are following up on it. So as we're building the capacity and licensing, we're also building the capacity of compliance and monitoring. And we created the Mining Services Company, a flexible company, an agile company that can be able to gain the best expertise from all over the world and spread the resources, the labor resources, to go and pursue the highest standards in all these resources. And we'll continue to learn and develop from all the super region, but also from the globe.
Ali, if I can come to you, as we start wrapping up our conversation. When we are looking at where we begin to start paying attention, the most attention, in order to ensure that we are being responsible as we move forward, which are the areas in your view that you think need the most attention? And perhaps, Zuhair, if I can come to you on the same question, if I can have you both respond to that.
So the customers, we are customer-centric. So maybe if I go back to the standards, for example, the standards is always built on the ecosystem development. So as Abdulrahman mentioned, the standards might be a little bit, the customers or the investors looks at it as a strong regulation or whatever, but at the end of the day, it develop all the ecosystem, either the mining or any other sectors. So again, our focus will be our customers paying attention on their needs, on their growth, capability, enablements, incentivizing and encouraging. We are always here for developing the capability of our investors.
Zuhair, if I could come to you.
Yes, from my point of view, I think that we still need to invest in advanced technology to assure a green mineral. Because I think we need to focus more in the care of the environmental and to have a sustainability in the mining sector.
As we wrap up, we literally have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask you each for your final thoughts. And Zuhair, if I could begin with you. As we move forward, when we leave here, what do we need to begin doing first in the context of the environment where you operate? So what is the first thing that we need to make sure we begin to do, if we're not already doing it, to ensure the responsibility that we've been talking about?
I think we need to see more our procedures our regulation and to train more, to develop skills, to take care of the environmental.
Brian?
To me, there are probably 2 or 3 initiatives that I think is. One is a closer cooperation between the ministries and industry. I think that's beginning. I think the framework is there. I think the will is there. I think that if we had more of that. And then I always flip across to the personal side. You know, this is about changing a whole mindset and culture. And if people don't believe in it, then you don't actually make progress. So you can do that at the macro level, and it doesn't change at the micro level. So for me, a lot of the work that we do with Abdul Rahman and the ministry, I think we've got to carry on and do it. Maybe
Suleiman?
more.
Thank you. Suleiman, yourself, what do you think we need to make sure we do? One or 2 things first.
As a responsibility, I'd like to have a team between the international company who are investing in Saudi Arabia and the local company where they have community, and this community are matched with the ministry, where we can chat and fight in the day and in the morning for each other, encircle one room. In the end of these meetings and close, within a few years, there is a lot of dissolve issue for the entire industry will develop. We have done it with the Chamber of Commerce Council, and we has been done great achievement. I'd like to have the local and the international with the ministry in umbrella where they can discuss and formalize within 1 year, 2 years. There is a good result will be formed from expert people.
I'm sure Abdurrahman is taking mental notes. He's going to go and do that when he leaves. Ali, what do you think we need to be doing?
Maybe I will probably build on what my colleagues mentioned. We have to get engaged with everyone, all the stakeholders. We have to be innovative in our initiatives and get it to the extra mile.
Last word to you, Abdurrahman.
Well, I believe we need to build on what we made here. We have all the expertise from all over the world.
What's the first thing that we need to do?
So we need to collaborate together, gain the expertise, the brains, to make sure that we put the right sustainable, responsible
All right.
policies and follow
I think
up.
we've got a great to-do list. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And if you can please extend your thanks to them as well. Thank you so very much for joining us.